gonna break the fourth wall for you guys real quick, just so you know the process that goes into this water bottle execution. You see, when I am investing my time and energy into Cormac McCarthy or Blood Meridian, and I just get so bogged down with all the fact of reality that is just filled with evil possibilities and the presence of malevolence and just all that badness, just there. So when I'm processing all that, sometimes I just gotta imagine that all that pain and rape and genocide and scalping and cannibalism and incest and infanticide and all that just disemboweling and warfare, just tribal warfare and just frontier madness and just all the bloody hell that reality or that the devil himself could have to offer, and just everything that drives Blood Meridian is just all right there inside that little water bottle. And it is my mission as a spiritual warrior to decapitate it and drain it of its essence. And that is what I've done here today. The moral of the story is, fuck the bad guys. Viva Las Jesus Maria. Oh, I'm just having a little breakfast. Hanging out in this huckleberry patch. Running across a couple raspberries. Anyway, I'm here now with the goods. Everybody wants to talk about it, especially me. Blood Meridian. There's a lot to talk about with Blood Meridian. And since this is my first video on it, I'm gonna skip a lot of formalities and a lot of foreplay, and I'm just gonna go straight into talking about the biggest heroes of the novel. Blood Meridian is absolutely known for being a completely hero-less, protagonist-less book. Fucking bugs. I'm gotta tell ya, when I finally discovered who the heroes were in the novel, I was pretty happy. And I'm probably gonna go to lengths of maybe getting a tattoo to symbolize the old stone town of Jesus Maria. Because in the whole novel, all the destruction, all the bullshit the Glanton gang does and drags through the territory, it kind of comes to a stop at Jesus Maria. And that is just my favorite scene in the whole book, man. It is just a wild. Hey, what's up, bro? Hey. It's just a wild scene, just everything about it, just the setting. If it were a movie, it would be the craziest, most dangerous movie set ever. So, the Glanton gang, goddamn, it's a grape. Fucking huckleberry. So they have gone on just a massive killing spree. And there's one chapter in the novel where they're just on a rampage. That first celebration scene when they get back to Chihuahua, I think, and they have the big feast with the governor, and then they trash the town and get ran out, and then they pretty much immediately just hit the desert and start killing defenseless Indians, slaughtering Mexican villages, getting into altercations with the citizenry in the towns and slaughtering everybody, leaving fucking dozens of people dead in one fight. They take on multiple different armies small armies and big armies, and they're just winning. You know, they're just slaughtering everything in their path. And about the only thing that's slowing them down, they are on the run. You know, they're on the run, but it's not as crucial, I think, at this point. But they're mainly just kind of weathered down because there's a storm, and they got to go down this canyon, and it's like, you know, thousands and thousands of feet. And as they make their way down the canyon, this big stone complex, super high, with little paths, little footpaths, complex of natural rock structures. And they make their way down in this storm down to a town called Jesus Maria that is nestled about midway down this fucking huge cliff. And it's described as a medieval town. Actually, I think it's alluded to as a medieval town when the judge you know, borrows a fiddle from this guy. It says they borrowed the guy's fiddle and started playing it, and the guy started doing a dance, and they seemed at once as minstrels met together by chance in this strange medieval town. I love this town, I love this scene because it is one of the most medieval-like scenes. If you isolated it, it wouldn't seem like a Western. It wouldn't seem like it was in the West. The whole thing takes place in these cliffs, this weird stone town in the middle of these cliffs. And anyway, the town, it's like a strong Catholic town. And they show up in a rainstorm, and everyone lets them in. They let them in. I think it might be because it's so dark and rainy they can't quite tell who they're letting in. But, you know, day one they let them in. They get up the next day, and, you know, within that day they're up to their same shit. But the town gives them a bar. They just say, "Yep, here's your bar." Hang out in the bar. They do everything they can to accommodate these guys, despite the fact they just came in off the desert dressed in fucking human skin and armed to the teeth, and nothing friendly looking about them at all. They're basically the enemy of the territory, the Apaches. They just managed to let them walk right in. So they're just doing their same stuff, and this is the scene where the judge buys the puppies from the little kid and throws them in the river, and then Bathcat shoots them. And I never understood that, why it happened, besides the bare simplicity of it, which is just, this was a happy town, a happy community, a pretty flourishing, isolated community. But there was just a lot of good vibes, I think, coming from the town when they got there. There was a festival going on. I feel like the way that they were treated nicely at first was in the fact that there was it's this kind of like a super nationalist kind of town, you know, like it's a real tight-knit community, and they're having this big festival. And I feel like the first couple nights before the gang starts doing their same shit, there's a fairly good vibes going on, good party. There's a good party. And they're all kind of having a good time because they're kind of too beat up, I think, from the weather and the ride to make them just do the same thing, which is slaughter everyone. So they kind of want to hang out for a while before they get around to feeling like that again. Hey! But they do, of course. They do. Little kids start to go missing, or, you know, one little kid goes missing. And, but I think that is the point that the town is like, okay, we have to get these guys out of here. We have to come up with a plan. They're basically a little army. They're armed. They're vicious. Their hunger and their thirst never quits, and they're going around at night, and everyone's boarded up their doors, and they're going around literally looking for young women. Like, these guys showed up to your town, you showed them hospitality, and then within 48 hours, they're drunk. They're too dangerous to get anywhere near, and their main goal is to acquire young women. So the town boards up all the young women, No one is to be seen, and then they just kind of take advantage of the town, and Glanton goes nuts. That's the scene where he goes nuts and has a fit and has to be restrained and tied up. And then he wakes up and he goes out. He's all pissed off at Mexico, and he ties the Mexican flag to the tail of a mule and rides it down the street. And at this point, I kind of feel like the gang, they're scattered out all over the town, just doing what they want, stealing shit, raping women that they can find, drinking booze, eating food, stealing shit, all the above. But they're just kind of scattered out because this town seemingly has kind of just rolled over and disappeared to hide away from them. But there's the scene where the little girl goes missing, and that's when I think the town made their plan, because it says they all gathered up at the church for the funeral. They all gathered at the church or the cemetery to mourn the lost girl. But I really, that's what I think they were planning to fight them off and to kick them out of their town. Basically Wild Bunch style, Dalton Gang style, the way that town waited for them to come rob the bank, and then when they came out of the bank, they just lit them up. And so that's kind of what happens to the Glanton gang. Their guard is down. You know, the judge is just so bored with all of these good vibes that he's got to go kill puppies. Glanton is so bored that he's gone into a depression. He's not killing enough, so he gets drunk and blacks out and passes out and cries and pouts and needs to be fucking coddled by the judge. Everybody else is just kind of off doing their own thing. I have a feeling Toadvine and the kid, the most normal, relatable characters in the novel, are probably just off doing something else, not as deplorable as what the others are doing. So anyway, Glanton comes out on that donkey with the Mexican flag tied to its tail, and then somebody shoots it out from under him. So he gets up and starts shooting. And right at that moment, I've read this novel for years, and I didn't understand why what happened here. What put them on the run down the canyon to knock all those muleteers off? One of the most fucking cruel fucking acts in the book, I think, just because it's the colossal murderousness of it, the desperate patheticness of it. But anyway, someone shoots the mule out from under him. He gets up shooting randomly, dropping random people. And then all of a sudden gunfire is just apparent. I think it says just regular gunfire erupts from the upper windows. Is about the only wording he uses. And it's pretty obvious what happened. The town made a plan, got their guns, made posts up in the upper windows, and just kind of waited for them to get drunk enough or violent enough, or just waited for the moment where they needed to start the fight. And they lit them up and they chased them right the fuck out of town. They didn't stand a chance. They left behind like almost 10 of their guys, all of which got fucking baptized and executed. That town, Jesus Maria, they're the heroes of the book, because after that, the gang is pretty much cursed. I don't think they have any more victories after that. But Jesus Maria, the people, the townsfolk were no one to fuck with. And they had them on a frantic, desperate race down that cliffside. And so when they met with those muleteers, it was life or death to them. If they weren't in such a rush, who knows what they would have done. I'm sure they might have tried to, they still would have killed them and scalped them, I'm sure, but they might have tried to take their Mercury. I don't know. Take some of their pack mules. But in this case, they just went in between the cliff and the guys and just shoved them off the canyon. Every single mule and every single man, the ones, except the ones they didn't shoot. It's a fucking crazy, wild scene. If it were in a movie, it would be the craziest shit ever. It'd be like a half-hour long scene of just the wildest build-up to the craziest climax, you know? That Blood Meridian would be should be full of scenes like that. Just scenes within scenes, you know, movies within movies within movies within movies. But yeah, that's my favorite part in Blood Meridian. The townsfolk of Jesus Maria are the heroes because they were a deeply religious town, and the gang had this altercation you'd say, with the preacher of the town, the priest, who, you know, wanted to do his preacher stuff, and the gang just mocked him and beat him. And there's some word McCarthy used, I forgot what it was, and I don't know what it means, but whatever it is, they did it to the preacher, and they didn't kill him, but they just disrespected him and his faith. And he kind of just let the preacher know that they were the devil, and that town prepared to fight the devil. And they fucking won. They won. And don't ever fucking forget that. There are protagonists in that story. And they may not be focused on, but they're there. They're there. And they're heroic. Absolutely. Alright, so now, the next segment. I told you I had the goods. And I'm going to deliver them in the form of a little comic that I ran across. I'm not sure how old it is, but it definitely came out before Blood Meridian, and it's based on kind of the more classic legend or myth of Glanton and his gang. So there's no kid or anything. But yeah, it's a little comic. It's not that long, but it details some of what I just talked about. And it's got an extra detail in there about the Glanton gang that I had never heard of. And that is that they forget Blood Meridian. This is just what the countryside thought and heard of them from the time they actually existed and after, because they're more legendary, mythical status than anything, even though they are documented as having actually been real. But I guess Glanton and his gang, Glanton was a shit. In this comic, it says Glanton is the one whose thing is getting drunk and preaching to the gang and standing up and preaching to the point of with his you know, weird custom warlike beliefs, and that the judge would sometimes have to console him. But it doesn't say much about the judge being the one that stands up and gives sermons. It's saying that Glanton was, and that he had a philosophy, like a warlike philosophy, and him and his men were disciples of a war god or something, and their place on Earth was to go around and take and kill and fuck, drink. And somewhere along those lines down in Mexico, Glanton heard about El Dorado. And so there's a story in this comic about how him and his gang went looking for El Dorado and kind of got driven into madness looking for it. I think it's saying that that's kind of what made him go nuts. They kind of couldn't find it, El Dorado, and so they just went to scalps instead for the riches. So I'm going to read it to you and show you the pictures. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure there's probably some kind of copyright strike in order for me for doing this, but whatever. This is for Cormac McCarthy and his fans, and this is for those of you that don't want to have to track down this book and buy it. You want a little something to take home, you know, a little something something you actually had never heard before about Blood Meridian and the Glanton gang. Something old. I don't know if Cormac McCarthy found this comic and used it. No mention of El Dorado and Blood Meridian. So, yeah, we're going to check it out. See what we think. In advance, you're welcome for this gift. This is for the spiritual warriors out there who withstand the test of time, enduring the heathen hordes as they come in waves, now and then. Viva Las Jesus Maria.